She is one of Canada's finest filmmakers and always gives us something meaningful to consider in her work. But Deepa Mehta's latest film may be achieving new heights of both teachable moments and controversy. The picture is called Anatomy of Violence, and it depicts the lives of a group of young men from India who are brutalized as children, then perpetuate that brutality on others when they become young adults. Disturbing doesn't begin to describe what you will see on the big screen, and we are pleased to welcome Deepa Mehta to our studios to discuss the issues her film raises. So great to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Nice to have you here. And we should remind everybody, you were the honoree of our 2016 TVO Gala this year, and you were spectacular that night, gave a great speech, and we were happy to have honored you.
No, I'm really grateful. That honor meant and continues to mean a lot to me. Yeah.
Good to hear. Let's play a little clip from your movie off the top, and then we shall come back and chat. Sheldon, if you would.
I was assaulted and raped on. He grabbed me from behind.
আমার বয়স ছিল 15 এটা একটি দাওয়াতে ঘটেছিল
تا آخر عمرم باید با این خاطره دردناک زندگی کنم.
Powiedział, że to była moja wina.
लड़के भी उतना उससे ज़्यादा जिम्मेदार है रेप के लिए ये लड़के हैं उससे ज़्यादा.
Мне было около 11 лет, когда меня изнасиловали. Приблизно 10-15 солдатів гвалтували мене.
Eu queria me matar.
We hinted in the introduction at the bigger message that you are trying to leave the audience in this picture, but perhaps it's better if we hear it straight from you. What message are you trying to get across in your film?
I think there's probably more than one message, but perhaps the main message, which is important for me, is that let's just look at the larger picture. And the larger picture means the complicity of society in the making of rapists. The reason I made the film was because I was and I still am trying to understand the role of society and what we do, whether it's gender inequality or whether it's patriarchy, and our role in the making of a rapist.
I don't have to tell you that for a lot of people that will be a very controversial suggestion, the notion that somehow society at large is complicit in the evil that is done when a man attacks a woman in that way. Why do you feel comfortable putting that out there?
Because it's not about denying the involvement or the culpability of the man. It's not or condoning it at all, but it's a desire to make it the wider conversation, because it's about prevention. Okay, so here's a monster, here's a victim, and I did not really want to re-victimize the victim again by focusing on the poor young woman, but I really did want to talk about prevention. So, where do monsters come from? The panel that you were so kind to lead, I think one of the panelists said that they just know they've known in their lives only one psychopath. So we make the rapists. That's not to condone what they do, not at all. But let's start talking about prevention.
You should just say that you were referring to a discussion that was held after a screening of your film at the TIFF building?
At the TIFF building
in downtown Toronto?
In downtown Toronto.
We did have a good discussion about that.
Yeah, you moderated it. You were fantastic. And so were the panelists.
They were superb.
They were superb,
I have to say. But again, the notion that somehow people who perpetrate this kind of crime, men who perpetrate this kind of crime, that they're not a bad seed, that somehow everybody in society has a hand in what they become, that's going to be a hard sell for a lot of people. Why do you think that's the case?
I think because we hate looking at ourselves in the mirror, and it's so much easier, Steve, to say, my God, he's a monster, and what he did is monstrous. Yes, what he did is monstrous. And yes, he did become a monster, but we've got to stop it. I mean, that's the most important thing. How are we going to stop it? Because the elimination of violence against women should be the top of our agenda as humanity.
Because it is, in your view, the most evil crime happening out?
Absolutely.
The men in this film who perpetrate this appalling crime, and I have to say, even before I get there, you don't show the rape. It's a very interesting choice that you made as a filmmaker to lead us down the road, and then when the moment comes when we know this awful thing is going to happen, I mean, I shouldn't give this away, but I guess I just did. You don't show it. How come?
Because there was no desire in re-victimizing the victim. What happened to her was dreadful, it was brutal, and I don't need to show it. What is more brutal is, if one can compare it in any way, is that these guys even exist. That for me is shocking.
They exist in, I presume part of the message is they exist in part because, and you take us back to their childhood, because they themselves were victimized in a variety of different ways when they were children. Is that part of the society-wide culpability you're trying to explain here?
Yes and no, because we don't become who we are in isolation is something that we talk about and in the film. And also we talk about the fact that there's no such thing as being stuck in bad traffic. We are the traffic. So the sooner we realize that, that means we can actually put a stop to it. If it's the way we bring up our sons and our daughters and there's gender inequality, if that changes, if girls are as valuable as boys are and they feel confident knowing that they're of value, then and boys feel that they're equal, then we have hope. In our education, we go to school, if we change that, then there is hope. If society is culpable, and I think it is largely, that means that it can also put a stop to it. And that, for me, is vital.
How much pushback have you had from film critics, from sociologists, from others, to that notion that society has a role in the creation of these monsters?
Well, I mean, it's been very interesting. I think that I would say about 90% of the feedback has been extremely positive, and saying, and this is what we wanted to do, that they want to use the film as a tool, to show men and women that the woman doesn't have to feel a victim forever, because that's not good for women. We have to empower them. We have to empower us, and the men feel that not all men are rapists. Feel that they can actually be a part of the solution, as opposed to a division between them and us.
Let me get inside your head a bit on that one,
Okay.
because there are people, I can think of several professors of feminism or women's studies or something like that, who say that every man is a potential rapist. Do you believe that?
Do they?
I've heard people say it.
I don't know.
That every man is a potential rapist.
Yeah, I guess, because I don't know. I feel uncomfortable with that. But I'm not a sociologist, I'm a filmmaker. But as a woman and as a feminist, I mean, I guess then every human being is a potential murderer. I mean, so what does that make us? Or every woman is a potential bad mother. I mean, it's too general for me.
Gotcha.
I'm into specifics.
All right, let's get into some specifics. Do we have to change the way young boys are raised in our society?
I think we have to change the way young boys are raised in society. And I'm not talking about young Indian boys. I'm talking about young Canadian boys. I'm talking about young American boys. And it just has to be looked differently. I mean, equality of gender is, I keep on repeating, I mean, it sounds even boring to me, is one of the most vital things right now in the world.
But is it your concern, I guess, your concern that there are too many young boys still being raised not to recognize the equality of the genders, even in the Western world? This is the case?
Totally. It's, one of the panelists who was on your panel, said that it's as simple as saying, okay, a mother saying or a father saying to the daughter, usually a mother, that you do the dishes, and the boy is being told by the father, you come out and help me, nail the barn door. Why? But just that use of muscle and power that we enable our boys, I think, is where it all starts.
Stereotyping starts early.
Totally. Oh, absolutely.
Again, I'm very curious about some of the choices that you made when you made the picture. And you decided to set this film in India, and everybody speaks Hindi, I guess, in the movie, right? There's some English spoken, but it's overwhelmingly in Hindi. Let's start there. How come?
Because I wanted to use the crime that happened in 2012, which was a gang rape, which was horrific and brutal and shocking.
So this is based on that true story?
It's not based on it. I used that as a framework.
As a frame.
Yeah, okay. Because there were a gang of six men who raped a young woman, which resulted in her death. Yeah. The rape was so brutal. Yeah. So I took that framework and because that it's a gang rape, it wasn't that as if rape wasn't happening all over the world. It continues to happen, and it did happen. But it was that moment that galvanized the whole nation and brought awareness, even outside India, to the whole idea, the concept of rape and how how it's not dealt with as far as the politicians and the police officers are concerned. And there seemed to be, it was totally tragic. So I used that, and as Buñuel said, my favorite filmmaker, I have to quote him, is that the minute you're particular is the minute you become universal. So using the particular gang rape, I think that what it's talking about, the film is talking about, is totally universal. Whether it's a gang rape in Brazil or what we are doing in Canada with our Aboriginal women is not very different.
I do want to follow up, though, on that notion of the universal being the particular, because I wonder whether some people will go to this movie and will see it and will say, oh, well, of course, that's over there. That's in India. We're not like that in Canada, or we're not like that in the United States. We're not like that in the West. Is there a part of you that worries at all that by setting the film there, you've let some of the rest of the world off the hook?
Oh, I absolutely don't think so. I want it to be authentic and original, and I'm sure there will be some people who say, oh, that happens in India. That happened with my film Water as well. You did it, and I remember a screening in Toronto, and a lot of people stayed back for the Q&A, and one woman said, I'm really sad about this film, and what can I do here for the widows of India? And I thought, I remember saying to her, stop worrying about the widows of India. We're taking care of them, or India is taking care of them, and the NGOs are taking care of them themselves. Let's worry about what's happening in our own backyard. So perhaps it starts a conversation. So there will be one person who will say, oh my God, this just happens in India. But hopefully the person standing next to them will say, you know what? It doesn't. It happens all over.
Let me raise another issue that critics have pointed to, and that is of personal responsibility. And some have made the point that at some point in someone's life, regardless of what has happened in their past, they are responsible for their own actions, and you cannot use your past as a crutch for explaining away bad behavior.
I totally agree.
You do?
Absolutely. I think that what this gang of rapists did, they're totally accountable for their crime. And they should be punished. And they should, it's not like feeling sorry for them because they had a bad childhood.
But that's what I'm wondering.
But the point is that because they had a bad childhood, that means that we actually are in the process, as we speak, of raising more rapists. That's what it's about.
That's the point you're trying to make. But
yes.
I know others have said, aha, look, she has shown their childhood. She has shown them being brutalized in their childhood. Therefore, she may be garnering a little bit of sympathy for why they are the way they are. Is that a fair point?
I think anything's a fair point. The good thing about, not being in the United States right now is that I don't have to tweet about it. But yeah, sure, they can think what they want to, but it's anybody who knows my work or who knows me and who sees the film and says, my God, it's really trying to talk about, we make rapists. It's not about they're not accountable for what they do. Of course they're accountable for what they do. But if you know my work, you would never question the fact that I'm anything else except a feminist, if anything.
For sure, and I do know I think I've seen every one of your movies, and I know that you get in trouble every time you make a movie.
I know, but maybe it's okay. I don't know. I feel sometimes I have to apologize for it, but I don't feel apologetic about Anatomy of Violence at all.
Not apologetic, but I wonder if you're worried because, you've experienced this before. You get threats. You get death threats when you make movies that tick off a considerable chunk of the population. You know, you don't worry about that?
No, I don't. I mean, I'd stop making movies other than, you know. I think that, and certainly I don't say I'm going to make a movie because I love death threats. I mean, I make films because I'm really curious about the subject. And I was very curious about what makes a rapist.
Do you feel you have a much better understanding of what makes a rapist now that you have made this picture?
Somewhat. I mean, I think it's a much deeper study than probably take years. But I have a visceral feeling about it, and or it's more organic, and it feels that there's some understanding, and I feel, if anything, I feel hopeful because perhaps we can start a conversation. If somebody can go home after seeing the film and say, you know, I don't treat my son equally like my daughter. My daughter is getting the short shift of it. Then I feel, okay, that's what the film's about.
That conversation would be great to start, but we live in a day and age now where, of course, another conversation will be happening simultaneously, and it will probably be happening on social media, and it will probably be happening amongst people who hate you and who hate the message you're trying to deliver. Do you worry that the film will actually make that conversation larger than the one you want to have?
I worry about it, yeah. But I think that perhaps I'm an optimist. I mean, I like to believe that you know, sanity will prevail, or I'm hopeful. I mean, I have to be. Otherwise, it's really tough to live right now in the political climate that we are in.
What's the toughest part about living in this climate?
Oh, it's just, I think I've been depressed since the U.S. elections, you know. It's really, you know, the thought of a president-elect who condones or he's even boastful about assault against women is really depressing, amongst other things.
You know, many have made the observation that Trump's election has given license, has enabled people who would hate the message of this film to be out there and feel quite comfortable about saying terrible things about you, about women, about the film, about anything.
Yeah, well, it doesn't take the film. I mean, you know, to do that.
That's
but,
there.
It's there. I mean, you know, whether it's about race or Muslims or colored people or Mexicans or the wall. I mean, it's given permission to be your worst possible person.
Which makes me wonder how you can be optimistic in the face of all that.
Because actually, women are speaking up. That's what I feel really optimistic about.
This movie,
and you, I mean, you did too. I mean, you were there. You were there saying, okay, we have to have a panel. Yes, you will moderate that panel because you're curious. I mean, it's curiosity where it's all about. I mean, it's not loving the film or not liking the film. It's about curiosity.
I think one of the great debates that's going to happen going forward here, let's just say in the province of Ontario for right now, is whether this film ought to be in schools. And I know your view. I know you think it ought to be. But this is a tough film to watch. And it's a tough film to watch for adults, let alone school-age children, or I guess high school children. Any thoughts on that, about how old you ought to be before you see this picture?
I think it would probably help if you were a senior in high school, but for sure. I mean, you know, kids today see, you know, Suicide Squad, which is so super violent, you know. And,
yeah, but you know what?
But it's not real, I guess.
Exactly.
That, you know,
it's completely fantasy.
But is it as unreal as seeing somebody in Chandigarh in northern India? Perhaps, you know. But it's about education. I mean, I'm really thrilled that, for example, in Iceland, they are going to start putting the film in the high school curriculum.
How did you make that happen?
I didn't make it happen. The minister made it happen. I mean, she came to see the film in Reykjavik, and along with Hirun, who's the head of the film festival, where you know, they talked about it and they said, this is what we have to do. It's about education. You know, if it happens in Ontario, I hope, do you have any pull with Kathleen Wynne? That would be great.
No, I've met her and she's been in that seat a few times, but otherwise, no. But you know, it's funny you mention that, because the Minister of Education in Ontario right now is Mitzi Hunter.
I know.
Who's a former board member here at TVO, and you know, as a black woman, I would assume has some heightened sympathy for the message you're trying to get across.
I think she does. I mean, Mitzi has seen the film, and I think is supportive of it. But we know how fraught it, even sex education is in Ontario. So, just that leap forward is when you think of places like Turkey, that is, where the head of Fipresci is actually taking the film from village to village, city to city. The same thing's happening in central India, in Rajasthan. It's happening in Cambodia and the Philippines. Then you say, why isn't it happening in Ontario? Why isn't it happening in BC? We need it too. So maybe, who knows?
Did you talk to Minister Hunter after she saw the movie?
Yes, I did.
Did she tell you what she thought of it?
She thought it was very powerful and extremely important.
I would,
So that's a-
I would
that's a
echo those
big-
comments, but okay, so the next step is now, did you push her about getting it into the schools?
No, I think I got a little bit overwhelmed, but I will now.
But you're not giving up on that?
Oh, I'm not giving up on anything. I mean, this is something that's extremely important to me.
What is wrong, when you watch this movie and you see the young men who perpetrate this unspeakable crime, there is, certainly I felt the tendency to say, you know what, let them rot in hell. I don't care about them. I don't, throw the book at them. In your picture, they incur the death penalty for doing what they did. And I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy for them. Is that terrible of me to confess?
No, neither do I. I don't feel any sympathy for them at all.
So
I
is there
think
any problem with the view of let them rot in hell?
Yeah, I'm against capital punishment. I mean, I don't condone it at all. If there was a proof, and I don't care about them. I care about the making of rapists. What they did was horrendous. Let's be clear about that. And they're totally accountable for what they did. But what I'm concerned about is prevention. So let them rot in hell, yeah, of course.
Okay, prevention. Where do we start?
We start at home with our family. We start at home with our brothers, our sisters, our daughters, our sons. And then we start with education.
How early?
I think as soon. It was very interesting. When I was seeing the film, when it opened, sitting next to me was an 8-year-old girl.
An 8-year-old girl saw
Yeah,
this movie?
Yeah.
Did you have any qualms about that?
No. I mean, I didn't. I mean,
Okay.
if her mother felt that her mother was sitting next to her, that she could see the movie, I mean, that's her choice.
Okay.
And at the end of the film, this really bright young girl, 8 years old, she said, "Thank you very much. That told me," what she said, that told me about things that I didn't know about. I said, "Aren't you a bit young to see this film?" I mean, And she said, "No, I'm not. I want to know." And it all started with her, sitting next to me. And, I went to stroke her cheek because she was lovely. And I said, "Hi." And she said, "Don't touch." And I thought, of course. So this girl has been told about boundaries. And are you too young to know about boundaries? No, we are not. So start young.
I guess as well, Trump's election has forced this conversation onto a lot of families that had hoped not to have it for many years yet.
Yes.
Just because of, the audio tape that came out during the campaign and some of the things that he said. And so it does prompt the question of at what age is it appropriate to start talking about this? And I guess that age is younger than it used to be, because they're hearing it now in the mass
They're hearing
media.
it all the time. I mean, kids know about social media much more than I would even know where to begin and how to start, and why not?
So we've talked about in the schools, we've talked about at home with families,
At home with family, then in the schools.
and then in the schools. And where else? I mean, is this the kind of message that
I mean, hopefully that, by the time they go to universities, I mean, rape is rampant in campuses, let's not forget.
Yeah.
I mean, that they are educated. Because is it about power? Yes, it is. It's definitely not about love, Is it about, Babsi Sidhwa, who wrote a wonderful book called Cracking India, said that all wars are fought on women's bodies. And it's stayed with me, We've got to stop it. It's endemic.
it's interesting, university and college campuses where you have a massive influx of young people, hormones, alcohol, and one wonders why these issues are present there. I mean, it's pretty obvious. You going to go from campus to campus playing this picture and having some discussions?
I would love to, and but I'm not, because what I'm looking for are, and we found some real champions who would do a much better job than I would, you know, and who have taken it on and said, okay, I'm going to make sure that it gets seen at Guelph University. I'm going to make sure that it's, you know, and it is going to be, and at U of T, and I'm going to make sure that, and these are young kids, or at Whistler, or in Vancouver. So it's starting to happen. So they will take it and run with it. So I'm looking for champions.
Do you ever wonder whether this film, I mean, this is not a $250 million blockbuster with a lot of smash-em-ups and cars banging into each other and, you know, guns firing off and that kind of thing. It's hard to get an audience, particularly for a movie that's got such a powerful message as yours does. How do you cut through?
First of all, it's about being realistic about expectations. I mean, I don't expect Anatomy of Violence to play at your local Cineplex. There's no way. I mean, I can't see a lineup, people with $14 wanting to spend their money to see a really brutal film that makes them feel uncomfortable and doesn't entertain them, you know. But that wasn't what we wanted to do anyways. Always the idea was to use the film as a tool of conversation, tool of prevention.
Let's finish up on this. You've been making movies for a long time now, right?
I know. See the gray hair?
I think it looks fantastic. What keeps you, I want to make sure I use the right adjective here, because I would say almost angry, right? Like you've got this undercurrent of anger that just hates injustice, and to me that's what looks like keeps you making movies that want to pack a powerful message. Is that the right word I should be using with you?
Anger? Maybe a bit of anger, Steve, but I think more passion, perhaps.
Passion.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to feel that I'm getting less angry with time, but that doesn't mean I'm becoming less passionate. I mean, I feel really, really strongly about some things. And I feel strongly about anatomy.
As you should. This is really a fine picture.
Thank you.
And you know what? Maybe as many people who will see the new Star Wars movie over the Christmas break
I doubt
will
it.
not see your movie as much as they will see that one. But the message of this picture is important. There's no question about it.
Great.
So good luck with it.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
luck
you
with
so
it.
much.
I hope lots of people get to see it.
Thank you.
The name of the film, once again, is Anatomy of Violence. Deepa Mehta has been our guest. Thank you so much for coming in and visiting us here at TVO tonight.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.